Good, happy Thursday morning, February 2020. I'm Riley King, and welcome to the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. We have a lot of news to get to this Thursday morning, so let's begin. First up, suspicious death being investigated in Manchester, authorities say. Police say shooting reported shortly before 8 p.m. last night. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Charisse LeClaire.
At Beltates, customers will find everything they need for a building project. The brand names you trust to perform. And with a fleet of over 50 delivery vehicles, we deliver when and where our customers need them. Beltates Building Products. 9 locations throughout New Hampshire and Massachusetts.
Well, Monica and Tom, we're here on Union Street between Bell and Grove, where if you can see behind me here, this is a very active scene with a large police presence at this hour. Now, police were called here for a shooting shortly before 8 o'clock tonight. All they're saying right now is that one person was taken to a nearby hospital. As we've been here, we've seen officers sort of canvassing this area with flashlights, looking around on nearby Bell Street as well. The Manchester crime van is also on the scene at a home on Union, and just within the last 20 minutes, the Attorney General's office announced that it is investigating this as a suspicious death. Not many details are being released at this hour. Right now, they just said one person was taken to a nearby hospital after the shooting. The AG's office investigating a suspicious death associated with this. We'll bring you more information as that comes into the newsroom tonight. Live in Manchester, I'm Charisse LeClaire, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. UNH graduate working in China returns to voluntary quarantine in California. Voluntary quarantine in California follows 3 weeks quarantine in Beijing. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Jean Mackin.
At Beltates, customers will find everything they need for a building project. The brand names you trust to perform. And with a fleet of over 50 delivery vehicles, we deliver when and where our customers need them. Beltates Building Products. 9 locations throughout New Hampshire and Massachusetts.
Jennifer Lindsay and her husband Conley arrived back in the U.S. Tuesday morning and are in voluntary quarantine at his family's home in Pasadena, California.
It sort of dawned on us just kind of how serious this was, and people were starting to wear masks everywhere.
Jennifer graduated from UNH in 2014 and moved to China, where she's been teaching English literature. While they were living in Beijing, 700 miles from the center of the coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan, they noticed life changing.
We had to fill out a form and at our compound and get these kind of like sort of pass cards just to come in and out of the compound where we live, and get our temperature taken every time we entered the compound. So most of the restaurants were shut down in Beijing, so the only thing we could really do was order takeout. There'd be a little piece of paper on the bag itself that had the name of the guy who delivered it and his temperature.
After a few weeks in quarantine there, they decided it was time to leave, flying from Korea to Los Angeles.
So all the U.S. citizens in the immigration line who had recently been to China the last 14 days were kind of told to kind of stand aside, and then this EMT sort of took our temperatures, asked us a few questions about our health and travel history.
They were told to quarantine at home for 14 days and report in.
Just kind of stay in the house, do a temperature measure twice a day, report to the Pasadena Health Department. And then at the end of that, if we have no symptoms, then we're all good to go.
And Jennifer says because they were quarantined in China and now here, their chances of contracting coronavirus are considered very low. She was able to teach her classes online, but now doesn't know if or when they'll ever return to China. Tom.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Police department disbanded. Chief protests by walking home in underwear. Select board eliminates Cordon Police Department. Let's take a listen to that video from my NBC News.
The Army has been an awesome experience, but after Roman was born, I started transitioning out to spend more time with the family. I found this job as an operations manager on LinkedIn. I applied, and I ended up getting a job.
Croydon has a population of roughly 760 people. It is served by a one-man police department. That was until a decision by the select board last night.
Did you know this was happening?
No, absolutely not.
Richard Lee is out of a job after the Croydon select board unanimously decided Tuesday night to get rid of the one-man police department in town.
The citizens that were up front were all surprised and shocked. One was very angry. She had a case pending before the court. It's now no good because I can't prosecute it.
The former chief says he's already turned in his cruiser keys and uniform.
I disrobed. And I left my office in my underwear and my boots and a hat.
Walking home from his part-time job that he had for 2 decades. And now some residents are worried.
I'm protecting myself right now. So, and my wife is protecting herself at the moment.
Although the town says New Hampshire State Police will respond to calls. This isn't the first time there's been an attempt to oust the force. Last spring, the town held a special town meeting deciding to keep the department.
We voted him in to keep him there last year. You know, I personally have never had a problem with the police here or the police anywhere.
A draft of the meeting minutes outlines a number of claims, including how much they pay for coverage.
Part of the discussion covered the fact that we didn't feel we were getting the value of the money being paid to the chief versus what we have been paying for the state police coverage.
Now that the town doesn't have its own force, the former chief has a message for the community he served for decades.
I wish him luck, and seriously, good luck. I wouldn't wish anybody ill in the town.
As for Lee, he says he'll no longer work in law enforcement and says if he can take legal action, he will. In Croydon, Matt Layton, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Missing parolee convicted in connection with New Hampshire officer's death arrested in Texas. Kevin Paul arrested by U.S. Marshals after nationwide search. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Amy Cavino.
Relief tonight for local, state, and federal law enforcement officials. 41-year-old Kevin Paul, a fugitive with a lengthy criminal record involving guns, drugs, and most notably, a conviction for his role in the 1997 shooting death of Epsom police officer Jeremy Sharon, is back in custody. It could have ended very differently.
He had nothing to lose. You know, he doesn't want to go back to prison, and it's one of those things that we wanted to get him off the street as soon as possible to prevent that from happening.
News 9 Investigates obtained an audio recording of the most recent parole hearing last September, in which Paul assured the parole board that he was worthy of another chance at freedom.
Okay, Mr. Paul, I've seen you on your previous bids for parole and gave you a chance and you disappointed me. But today, I believe that you're a new person. So the decision of the board is we are going to give you another chance to prove yourself.
I'm not going to let you down. I'm not going to let you down.
4 months after Paul's parole date, a warrant issued for his arrest. 10 days ago, Paul stopped communicating with his parole officer, claiming his GPS monitoring bracelet wasn't working.
I'd like to retire and not have to look for Mr. Paul again, but we'll see what happens. It's up to them.
Kevin Paul is being held in the Bell County Jail in Texas. New Hampshire authorities will travel from New Hampshire to Texas to bring him right back here. He will have to answer to the parole board for his alleged violations. We're live in Concord this evening. Amy Cavino, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Judge orders release of documents from Hershberger disaster. Many say questions remain about worst submarine disaster in U.S. history. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Jennifer Crompton.
April 1963, the USS Thresher left the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard for routine deep dive tests 200 miles off the Cape. 129 men aboard planning to be home for Easter. But on April 10th, all were lost in the worst nuclear submarine disaster in U.S. history.
The original theory was that there was no faulty piping that caused the reactor to shut down, which lost power, which caused it to sink and then implode. But there are other theories out there, too.
Last summer, a retired Navy captain and submarine commander sued the Navy for release of unclassified Thresher documents. Now, a federal judge has ordered the Navy to start releasing them by mid-May.
When you finally see all of the documents, I think that will fill in the rest of the story.
Ken Latchaw served aboard the USS Albacore from 1968 through 1970. The Albacore, now part of a museum in Portsmouth, had to test and perfect a system called SubSafe after the Thresher sank and before any sub-construction could continue.
The Albacore tested that system, which meant blowing all the main ballast tanks simultaneously without any delay in time whatsoever. And that would save precious seconds when trying to surface.
Safety lessons, one of the legacies of the Thresher. 57 years later, hope is these unclassified documents might provide more.
At the very least, this might help provide answers for, surviving family members.
In Portsmouth, Jennifer Crompton, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Man sentenced to at least 15 years in prison for stabbing woman to death. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
The New Hampshire Community Loan Fund is tackling some of our state's most urgent needs, like increasing access to local food by supporting farmers, fishers, and food businesses statewide. Your donation to the Capital Impact Challenge can have a profound impact. Give today.
I didn't mean to kill Sabrina that night, but it happened.
Deshaun Jett says it was supposed to be a simple drug deal, but it took a tragic turn and ended with the death of 23-year-old Sabrina Galusha.
I just think this whole thing is just so useless. Somebody dying over less than $100 bag of marijuana. I mean, what's this world coming to?
Jett was convicted of manslaughter for stabbing Galusha in the heart. He maintained through his trial that he acted in self-defense when jumped by 3 people.
If there's anything that the family could believe, is that I'm truly sorry. I mean this with the bottom of my heart.
Judge John Kissinger sentenced Jett to a minimum of 15 years in prison, saying he is solely responsible for Galusha's death.
It's been a long battle. We're tired.
It doesn't change anything. No matter how this came out today, she's still gone.
Now, Jen has already served about 2.5 years in prison pre-trial, meaning that by law, he will be allowed to apply for an early release from prison in about 7 more years. Reporting live in Concord, I'm Andy Hershberger, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. U.S. futures point to a slightly higher open after new record highs on Wall Street. U.S. stock index futures are pointing to a slightly higher open on Wall Street Thursday morning after a closing at fresh record highs, as investors continue to monitor the global economic impact of the coronavirus outbreak. Moments that mattered from the 9th Democratic debate. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
The gloves came off almost immediately.
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg.
The Democratic candidates taking to the stage Wednesday in this 9th Democratic debate hosted by NBC News. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg spending millions of his own money on campaign ads, making him a prime target.
Mr. Bloomberg had policies in New York City of stop and frisk, which went after African American and Latino people in an outrageous way. That is not a way you're going to grow voter turnout.
Senator Bernie Sanders surging in national polls, now the frontrunner, making him a target as well.
Let's put forward somebody who's actually a Democrat. Look, we shouldn't have to choose between one candidate who wants to burn this party down and another candidate who wants to buy this party out.
But Sanders pushing back.
Maybe it's a time for the working class of this country to have a little bit of power in Washington rather than your billionaire campaign contributors.
Even calling each other out over health care.
I don't think there's any chance of the senator beating President Trump. You don't start out by saying, I've got 160 million people. I'm going to take away the insurance plan that they love.
I'm the only one in this state that's actually got anything done on health care. Okay?
Amy, I looked online at your plan. It's 2 paragraphs. Families are suffering, and they need a plan.
Over 70,000 Nevada Democrats already cast their early ballots ahead of Saturday's caucus. The candidates then turning their focus to the next contest, South Carolina, and that is where the 10th debate will be on Tuesday, just a few days away from their primary. Zoreen Shah, ABC News, Las Vegas.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that does it for this morning edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all have a great rest of your morning and a great rest of your day, and I'll see you back here later on today for another newscast. And I'll have a news report coming up in a little bit. Goodbye, everyone.